All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bitcoin Stoa. As a reminder, you can actually earn Bitcoin by listening to this conversation and other podcasts by using Fountain. And if you enjoy listening to the conversation, you can support the Bitcoin Stoa by streaming or boosting sats using the Fountain platform as well. So today is 15th anniversary of Satoshi posting the white paper. And so it's a pretty significant day, at least for those who are involved in Bitcoin, and one that we want to celebrate. So Pavel and I are catching up for the first time in a while. And, I think with those 9 pages, Satoshi initiated a revolution for humanity, probably beyond, part of me always wonders, I wonder how deeply Satoshi realized he would impact the world of money, the world of finance, the world of economics, how we think about all these things, and how literally a piece of software encapsulated in a 9-page white paper can nudge humanity in a way that I don't know of any other technology that has done it quite as profoundly. So current block height is 814,690, and the current exchange rate is 34,320 US dollars for one Bitcoin. Pavel, thanks for being here and being available.
Thank you, Nick, for inviting me. And let's go. Let's talk.
Well, let's talk about the white paper first. Like, when do you remember the first time you ever read the white paper and what your preliminary, what your initial thoughts were? Yeah, love to hear it.
Oh, well, that would be probably around maybe 2012, maybe 13. I haven't read. I mean, I kind of glanced over it. Didn't really. I wasn't really technical enough to kind of understand the significance. Of course, if I was, then I would jump into it immediately. But yeah, I mean, I read it. It seemed interesting, but as I said, I didn't really got it immediately, and I think most people just cannot grasp the significance of this quickly. Some people are exceptions to this rule, but most people can't. So I think basically we need time to understand what Bitcoin is. So, and I usually when I talk with people about Bitcoin, I don't really even tell them to go and read the white paper, because I think it's pretty technical in nature. But on the other hand, it's you should be reading it at this stage of Bitcoin's development if you are one of the people who understand Bitcoin, in any significant way. Bitcoin white paper is definitely one of the things that you should read. It's nice that we are now celebrating 15th anniversary. I still think we are extremely early with the Bitcoin development thing, in general, very, very early. I think we are, I still think that less than 1% of people all around the world actually own any Bitcoin and use it. And so we have so much more to grow into. Now, how fast is that going to happen? I'd rather it happens not too quickly, because the level of change in the world right now is very, it's very intense. So, but things are gonna happen the way they are. So I think when everything is said and done in 100 years, I think the whole of humanity is going to live on a full Bitcoin standard, and forget the fiat century of war, death, and destruction, and poverty, and and disease, and misallocation of capital, and all these bad things that we are kind of experiencing, even though the humanity in general is it's still evolving, right? We still have all these technologies, all these ways that we can increase the quality of our life, but still most of the people, I would say, still live in this kind of almost like a debt slavery situation where all these gains from the technology development and all of that kind of concentrated in very, very small number of people who are kind of benefiting from the fiat seigniorage and cantillon effect, while most people are kind of struggling to get by. I was just looking at the prices of the median yearly salaries to buy a home, a house back in, let's say, 60s compared to today. And it's like back then, like it took you maybe three and a half salaries to buy a home. Now it's taking you around five, something like that. And because, there's, most people do not really use hard money to save, right? Fiat is soft money that loses purchasing power over time. Nobody's really saving, so everyone is getting into debt. So, especially right now when the interest rates shot up, many people are kind of struggling with that. But Bitcoin fixes this. It's a fix, really. It is a solution. It's a technological upgrade for the problem that's very deeply embedded. But I think people are just going to adopt it individually, one by one, slowly over time. And once you do, once you get to that point where you are, on a full Bitcoin standard, then you really understand it, kind of what it really means. How do you handle this type of money? It changes the way you think. It changes the way you spend. It changes the way you invest. All for the better. But again, you need time to get to that point, and everybody is going to get to that point. So let's just be patient and allow the things to unfold. That's
Yeah.
my view.
I think, I think as silly as it would be to say that we are interneters, right? You and I, we're using the internet, so we're interneters. It's going to be that silly in
Yeah.
15 years to say you're a Bitcoiner, because everyone's going to use Bitcoin, right? Everyone's going to eventually discover this open, decentralized, fair system. It can't be uninvented. It can't be shut down. And yeah, I think it's crazy how much money influences everything in the world. And I think some people who don't understand Bitcoin or don't know the deep implications of scarce money that can't be stopped might think it's a bit of a hyper sensationalism to say Bitcoin fixes this. Bitcoin fixes so many things, because I think most people are used to only looking at things in terms of first order effects. And while there are first order effects with money, big ones, the second, third, fourth, fifth order effects of looking at life and making all your life decisions through the lens of, sound money, instead of a credit system where we're literally incentivized in everything we do to pull from the future to have something now that we can't afford, but that are told we can just pay over time. And I remember talking about this with you a year ago when I came to Rab. It's like this notion that when you acquire something, if you don't own it, it owns you, because you're on the hook to essentially putting your time towards paying that thing off. Even if in future you don't value it as much as you did when you initially acquired it, it doesn't matter. You're a slave to that thing until you've officially paid it off. And I think it's so easy to spend from the future when the world revolves around credit, where everyone's being told, oh, you don't even have to, you can pay nothing today. Just pay small payments for the rest of your life. This idea with a mortgage where, homes have turned into people's savings account because the money broke, makes it so that now, in order to actually have a home for its utilitarian value, is virtually unachievable for most people earning an average salary. And if it is achievable, you're essentially signing on to be a slave for the rest of your life to paying banks more than what your home is even worth at today's interest rates, which is just kind of absurd to say. And I think this is sometimes where some of the clash is from, our parents' generation, the wisdom of their time the time they lived in, which is a fundamentally different time in terms of the world that they were in, no longer applies today. And it sort of disrupted this parent to child wisdom Passover, because the things that worked for them and that were actually sound wisdom in their time no longer hold true. And so it's almost like we have to develop our own wisdom and determine our own way of living in this current world. And I think part of that mismatch is that we now have Bitcoin, and our parents, it's just such a fundamentally different paradigm that our parents haven't yet grasped the significance or the meaning of this thing and how this changes literally everything. Everything must be reevaluated, and all understanding of the old world must be essentially burned and eliminated to make space for this new understanding that can now form. And yeah, this notion that everything is downstream of money, right? Our food is downstream of money, our health is downstream of money, our education is downstream of money. Every decision we make is essentially done through the lens of money, whether we realize it or not. And now we have this thing called Bitcoin, which is essentially repricing the entire world. And the other day I had a conversation with someone about volatility, and they brought up, Bitcoin is so volatile. There's no way I could ever put a meaningful amount of my wealth in Bitcoin. It's just, I wouldn't have the emotional resilience, and it's just too risky. So I think there's two faults there. Number one, they associated risk with volatility. And number two, they associated that Bitcoin was volatile. And again, when you change the lens, it changes how you view everything. And my lens now is the world and fiat is insanely volatile. Bitcoin is the most stable thing in the world. It's completely predictable. I know how much Bitcoin there is in existence right now. I know how much there's going to be in 10 years, 20 years. And it's incredibly stable. And calling Bitcoin volatile in the fiat, when you're pricing it in fiat, is like having an earthquake seismograph that's detecting giant oscillations in tectonic plates and calling the seismograph volatile. The seismograph is just a tool to measure the volatility of the earth, right? It's not the tool that's volatile. It's what the tool is measuring. And I think Bitcoin is just this honest pricing tool that is measuring the volatility of the fiat world, which is filled with uncertainty and chaos. But we often misattribute the Bitcoin as being volatile when we price it in fiat, not the fiat world being crazy volatile. So yeah, it really is, like you said, it just takes time and patience, and people have to have enough of a reason to learn about it. And I mean, you're one of the few people that I know on planet Earth amongst all Bitcoiners that actually lives in true radical alignment with Bitcoin, because you live on a Bitcoin standard. And you actually started to open source that wisdom with an online Git book. And that's kind of what I wanted to hear about today, is just, why did you write it? Who's it for? And, if someone comes to you and says, I realize Bitcoin exists, I want to transition my life to radically look through the lens of Bitcoin and make my decisions through the lens of Bitcoin, what does that process look like? And yeah, I'd just love to hear, it's hard to put thoughts down on paper with clarity. It's like one of the hardest things I think is actually writing, because you need the focus and the clarity to actually know what to write and have the mental space to actually do the thing. So why'd you do it? And who is this for, and how do people find it? Because I really want to dig into some of the concepts that you covered.
Well, first of all, I have to thank you, basically, because when you were here, you kind of, basically you got me, kind of nudged me into it, to put the thoughts in writing. You showed me how you do it, on GitHub in particularly, and how you make your health business kind of work. And I thought along about it, because I had a lot of, I mean, when you live something, you kind of take it for granted. You know how to do it. For example, I know how to live on a full Bitcoin standard for 3 years already. Yeah, probably. Since 2020, around this time. So 3 years now. So I know how to do it, but it's hard to explain that to someone else. So I kind of, at some point, I just decided, heck, I'm just gonna start writing this down in an open source way. And it's still it's still a draft, so it's not finished. We can share
It's a pretty damn good draft, I gotta say. I read it.
Yeah,
it's pretty impressive.
It's a draft. But the thing is that I got the idea to just stick down, get some consistency in writing. So I have been writing 6 days a week, at least a little bit. So just not to break this this chain. Another one of your kind of ideas that I kind of got stuck and applied on this process. And what I ended up with is, as I said, a draft of a manual, a guidebook of sorts for Bitcoiners first. So this is really not something for people who are pre-coiners or no coiners, right? So they have to kind of at least start getting into Bitcoin, and even more so, it's for Bitcoiners who are already at the point where they truly understand the difference between Bitcoin and shitcoins, right? Cryptocurrencies and all of that. So they have crystal clarity about, you know, they treat Bitcoin as savings, as money. They are not trying to, you know, think of it any other way. It's not like a portfolio diversifier necessarily for them. It's really kind of a savings, right?
Yeah.
But they are probably still in a situation where they are not sure. I mean, that's what I had in the beginning, where you are kind of afraid to spend your Bitcoin, or you may, you may spend a little bit, just, you know, here and there, just, you know, like a coffee purchase, or just
It's like a
something,
novelty,
and then,
basically, at that
yeah,
point.
it's like a novelty, and then it's cool. So you know, you pay with Lightning, and it's nice and so on. But you are not sure if you should, for example, should you let's say, should you buy a car, for example, with and then spend your Bitcoin on a car, when you know that whatever you spent today on a car is going to be worth, you know, 10, 100 times more later. So are you going to be you know, Bitcoin pizza guy, right? Are you going to be a guy who is going to, you know, oh my God, say I spent so much Bitcoin back then on two pizzas that I could have $300 million today. So so this is one thing that many Bitcoiners kind of struggle with. And another thing is the volatility that you know, as you mentioned, even if you understand Bitcoin very, very, very well, you need to know how to handle volatility, right? So we basically, many Bitcoiners may be apprehensive and kind of shy away from trying to use Bitcoin as your primary money, because what if, you know, what if I do this and then, you know, Bitcoin drops down, I don't know, 50%, which, you know, can happen. We just went through the pretty brutal, longest bear market, right, in history of Bitcoin. 2022 was really, it wasn't, you know, the drawdown from the top until bottom was not the steepest one. We had, you know, I think 87% or something was the highest level drawdown. But we had the longest period of time that the Bitcoin price went in below its 200-week moving average, which is like the 200-week moving average is basically almost 4 years moving average price, which constantly grows. Today it's around, I think, $29,000. So we are basically slightly a bit above it, but you know, historically speaking, median multiplier of the current price and 200-week moving average price is around 2.5. I have these calculations somewhere, so we are still quite a bit below the historical median price.
And just just to put a pin in that, it's like the 200-day moving average is actually a beautiful way to determine where the Bitcoin price is relative to that sort of anchor, right? If it's way above it, if the multiple is super high in terms of the multiple of the 200-week moving average, you know that there's, you know, it's probably a good time to spend money on things like pre-spend. Prepay
Absolutely.
for things in the future. Whereas if it's below, it's like that's a good time to spend less and stack more. And so I think it's, the purchasing power, it's kind of like a huge mental trick, right? Because the amount of sats you own is one factor, and we all want to see our number of sats go up. But the reality is, really, our sats should go down steadily over time. Whereas our purchasing power is this other metric,
Yeah,
which even if our sats go down, our purchasing power goes up. And so, really, it's just about being wise with how to harmonize those two things, because it
exactly.
really is this mental trick where psychologically you're going to get fucked with. But if you really have an anchored foundational understanding that my sats will go down over time, my purchasing power will go up, and pricing my world in Bitcoin, using Bitcoin as my unit of account is actually the best way to truly understand the opportunity cost of spending every sat. And I think that it still blows my mind that you have been doing this for so long, because truly bringing your life to a Bitcoin standard, I don't
Yeah,
think there's very many people. Like, we're so early in the grand scheme of things, and you're like a micro subset of a micro subset right now.
yeah,
But I actually think, in reading through your Git book, it was like, wow, this actually is the only truthful lens to look at the world through, because you no longer
yeah.
are corrupted by misinformation from fiat. So yeah, 200-day moving average, great barometer to know where's the price of Bitcoin relative to this long time span average. And I think it's a powerful tool.
Yeah, definitely. And again, last year we spent almost 6 months below that price. So that was
That's
like
crazy.
when we were around $16,000. I remember like the vast majority of Bitcoiners on Twitter were so bearish. Like everyone was calling, $12,000 Bitcoin, $10,000 Bitcoin. Everyone was like, I literally felt like this is crazy. I mean, and I was stacking, I was stacking at the highest possible level, living on the full Bitcoin standard, because my expenses were lowered, my income was up because I was working more. So, and again, because I live on a full Bitcoin standard, all of that increase in net savings, in net income rate went into Bitcoin. So, and I told everyone on my weekly podcast here in Balkans region to just go all into Bitcoin now. Now is the time. Now is the time. Every single week, and everyone was like, at least slowing down their DCA allocations, right? So maybe they weren't selling or just stopping buying altogether, but they would kind of, just let's wait a little bit more until it drops a bit more, then I will buy. So this is natural. This is natural reaction when you still have some when you are still at the point where you are kind of transitioning your cash balance to Bitcoin only, basically. And I wrote this guidebook to help Bitcoiners how to actually do this on a very, very practical level. And the guidebook is and how to handle the volatility, because as you said, this is extremely important point with the nominal amount of Bitcoin that you have, and how it's really not about that. We are used to understanding money, in fiat standard. You want to increase the number of dollars that you have, basically, right? You want to have as you want to grow that number, because ultimately the number of dollars is growing, right? In total, it's getting printed constantly. Every time someone takes a loan, gets into a debt contract, new money is being created, new dollars are created, and all other fiat monies. And then, in order to keep your purchasing power or increase your purchasing power, you need to have more nominal units of money. And Bitcoin works in the opposite way. It's all about your purchasing power and how your purchasing power behaves over time. So what does it mean? It means that today, for example, one single Bitcoin has, 10,000 more purchasing power than 10,000 Bitcoin had in 2010 or more, right? Back then, when Laszlo Hanets bought two pizzas for 10,000 BTC, that was like $30. That was like one BTC was 3 cents. Today, one Bitcoin is $30,000. So you can buy a car, right? For 1 Bitcoin. Back then, you couldn't buy, you could buy 2 pizzas with 10,000 Bitcoin. But this means that, let's say 10 years from now, right? 0.001 Bitcoin is gonna have much more purchasing power than whole Bitcoin today. Okay.
Yep.
So, and this is, yeah, this, when you hear something like this, you may understand it on a theoretical level. But once you actually start using Bitcoin as your primary money, meaning you convert all of your cash balance to it, and then, of course, when you need to pay someone, right, in fiat, you convert it back to fiat and pay it, right? And you can make these conversions whenever you want, right? You have, most people have access to exchanges where they can do it. Then you really start to understand it, because it's really not about the nominal amount of Bitcoin you have. It's about your purchasing power growing overall. And how do you know that your purchasing power is growing? But well, because you see that you can buy more. So, for example, for me, my let's say my overall prices actually went down since I entered into a full Bitcoin standard by around three times, right? So my groceries, my grocery bill, my gasoline bill, my rent, my travel expenses,
Everything's getting cheaper for you.
everything is getting cheaper. And I literally see it, because I know, if let's say if you make $50,000 a year and you spend $45,000 a year, right? You have $5,000 net savings, net income, right? And it doesn't matter. Like you can make $100,000 and spend $95,000. You're still gonna have same net income, because net income is your inflows minus your outflows, right? So this is the number that you need to see. So there are 4 ways to increase your net income, right? You can either let your outflows stay the same, right? And increase your inflows. So let's say if you used to make 50K a year, increase that inflow to 55K. And then
without increasing your expenses.
Without increasing. So now you have increased your net income. And now your net income is not $5,000 a year, it's $10,000 a year. You can, right? That's the first way. The second way is you don't increase your inflows, right? You don't increase your income, but you cut down on your spending. So you decrease your inflows. So if you can make 50,000 a year and spend 40, right, instead of 45, you still increased your net income. The third way is to both increase your inflows and decrease your outflows, right, at the same time. So you're going to increase your income. And the fourth and final way is to increase both your inflows, your income, and your outflows. So your expenses go up, but your income goes up more at a higher rate than expenses. So you may make, let's say, 65 a year and spend 55 a year or 50 a year, and you still increased your net income, because you increased your inflows higher than your outflows. So these are the 4 ways to increase the net income. But in order to know what is your net income, right, you have to start planning your money. You have to start budgeting. This is the first step. So this guidebook is divided into 2 main areas. Okay, the first area is discussing the 3 fundamental practices or principles, however you want to call it. They are timeless. They are kind of expression of millennia of wisdom, which are: number 1 is always plan your money, right? So always have a plan before you make transactions with your money. You need to create a budget. And I show exactly what type of a budget it is. It's a zero-based budget. But that's the first thing. You need to plan your money. Second, you always have to live debt-free, right? So the principle is you never spend from the future, right? You always and only spend from the past, okay? Why? Because the future is uncertain and the past is certain. And whenever you spend from the future, you are generating these 3, so to speak, negative spirits, spirit of slavery, spirit of confusion, and spirit of restlessness. While if you are only spending from the past, you have your spirit of freedom grows, spirit of clarity, and spirit of peace. And then the third principle, which is the, you know, the maybe the one that's kind of most it's most impactful, at least it was for me, although all of those are very important and they should be applied in exact order. So first, always plan your money, then always live debt free. And then the third, always have at least 10 to 20% of your budget assigned for giving, okay? And this third principle is actually, it's really about increasing your capacity to generate more inflows, okay? That's really what it comes down to, although there are many beneficial other things that it's going to do for you. It's a practice with money that is growing what's called the spirit of generosity, right? And it hampers the growth of the spirit of stinginess, right? So basically you can, and the spirit of generosity increases the amount of opportunities and your risk tolerance to undertake them, and makes your business, whatever you are working in, right? Any way you are actually serving other people, it makes you better at it, because you are coming from a different kind of, you are coming from the abundance mindset, and not, you're not desperate to make a transaction, so you can actually attract more opportunities, and this is making your income grow, right? So I would say that the first thing is take control over your money, right? By practicing zero-based budgeting. That's the first principle. The second is stop spending credit, right? Stop spending future, because this is the source of wasteful outflows, right? So this is the main purpose of stopping doing the spending, getting out of debt, right? Basically becoming debt free. The main purpose of that is to cut down all outflows that are wasteful, right? All the because what you are doing is you are wasting a lot of money on interest, on misallocation of capital, on misjudgment of valuations in the time dimension, which is also discussed in the book. And this is everything that you have is costing you more, because you are paying with it with the money from the future, which is again uncertain. So the purpose of the second thing is to eliminate wasteful outflows, and the purpose of the third, giving, is to increase the inflows. And then that's the first part of the book. The second part of the book is, how do you actually, once you did that, how do you start using Bitcoin as your primary money in the context of your net worth? So what if, for example, you have a house, right? Let's say you have a mortgage, you have a house, and you have some Bitcoin. Should you right? If the first part of the book says that you should be debt free, should you sell your Bitcoin, pay off the mortgage? Or should you sell should you have a house? How much? If you have, let's say, $200,000 in Bitcoin, should you buy a house that costs 150 or 200? Should you buy that? Should you do that? Should you invest in your business? Like how do you think about your net worth overall, your investments, in the context of the full Bitcoin standard? And what I propose here is to, first of all, follow what's called the rule of thirds, right? And this is expressed
like
in
ancient wisdom, timeless wisdom.
Very ancient wisdom, and it's extremely applicable to today, especially with Bitcoin. So so imagine your net worth consisting of three different parts. The first part is your cash, your money, right? Your liquid money. And if you are going to go live on a full Bitcoin standard, that's going to be your Bitcoin. Maybe you're going to always, you will always have some fiat on hand just to be able to pay, daily expenses, but you're not going to use fiat to hedge Bitcoin's volatility. You will have, enough money. Let's say if your rent is coming up or some expenses coming up in a week or so, you're going to have you're going to exchange some Bitcoin to fiat in order to cover it. So it's not like you're going to have zero fiat always. You're always going to have some cash in your wallet, some money in your fiat checking account, but primary money is going to be Bitcoin, right? So your income is going to be converted to Bitcoin regardless of which, if it's paid in Bitcoin directly or if it's paid in fiat, and that's what you are going to use. So I propose you should have at least a third of your net worth in cash, right? In Bitcoin, basically, at least a third. And then the other two parts of your net worth are kind of basically divided into, it's useful to study Austrian economics and kind of understand how humans, we spend time in two different basically ways when it comes to money. We spend time either in leisure, right, or in labor. Okay, so in leisure is everything that we are doing for its own sake. Basically, we are, enjoying with our family at our home. Maybe we are going to a vacation. Maybe we have, I don't know, a boat that we go and take away or whatever, right? All of the things that we own that are used for leisure, and I call this part of the net worth land or estate or land. Land is everything. Let's say your house, your car, your appliances at home, all of that is accounted for. So you can actually account how much is it worth, all of that. And all of that is part of your land, part of the net worth. And I say that you shouldn't have more than 1/3 of your net worth in land, right? And it's not really, let's say if you have a car that you are using both for leisure and for your labor, for your work, then let's say that the car is worth, I don't know, 20,000. Then if you are using it half for the leisure and half for the work, then it's, $10,000 is accounted under the land category and of net worth, and 10,000 is accounted under the capital category. So the third and final part of your net worth is your capital. So what is your capital? Your capital is everything that you are using essentially to generate money, right? To generate your inflows. This may be, if you are a business owner, let's say that you are a car mechanic, right? This is your equipment, your tools, your car shop, right? If you are a merchant, you may have an inventory of things, right? I work for Safedin, so he has a number of books in his inventory. That's all part of the capital. Also, if you own some piece of investment, like I don't know, a stock or anything that generates income is considered, or is used to generate inflows, is considered part of the capital. And when you're looking at your net worth overall, you should not exceed more than 1/3 in land, right, which you are using in your leisure time, not 1/3 in your capital, which you are using to generate money.
Not more than 1/3.
No more than 1/3, right? So don't go above 1/3. And it's a pretty solid way to understand. Let's say if you enter a bear market with Bitcoin, right? And let's say that you kind of you bought a lot of things. Let's say you bought a new house, you bought some, and you invested in your business, right? And perhaps when in the beginning of the bear market, you had this perfect. Let's say that your total net worth is $300,000, and you bought $100,000 worth of land, $100,000 worth of capital, and you were left with 100,000 in Bitcoin. If Bitcoin drops by 50%, right? If it cuts in half, right? Now you are left with $250,000 net worth, right? And Bitcoin is now 25% of the net worth, right? Am I doing it correctly? So 25K, so 50K in Bitcoin, 100K in
I think it's
land,
less.
100K.
I think it's closer to 20K or 20%.
20%, sorry, 20%. So you basically now have,
So you've come out of
now
balance compared to those
you are
third.
you came out of balance. And the reason why now you should be right, it's maybe it's not immediately, you shouldn't really immediately sell some, liquidate some things back to Bitcoin. Maybe you should, that's your decision. But it's helpful to understand that the reason why you don't want to go too much down with your cash, basically with your Bitcoin, is that if you go below certain threshold, you are too illiquid. You are not able, because remember, we need to budget at least 10 to 20% of our money in Bitcoin, right? Which is going to be in Bitcoin for giving. And the giving action is actually what is causing us to grow our inflow, right? It's causing us to make more money. It's growing our capacity to make more money. We do not want to get into a situation where we are not really able to make these giving transactions because we are just too illiquid. So this is like a perfect example is, in a fiat standard world, you have someone who has, let's say, $1 million net worth, but let's say he has $950,000 in his house, right? And maybe $40,000 in his sort of investments, and only $10,000 in cash. Well, if he has only $10,000 in cash, if he gives 10 to 20% of that, right, that's like $1,000 to $2,000 in $1 million net worth. Having such a small giving budget is actually going to cause, like, it's not going to grow the spirit of generosity. You need to, it needs to be in a proportion. So one of the wisdom points is that if your giving budget, if anything that you are considering as part of your net worth, if it's under 1/60th, so 1 divided by 60, it's kind of insignificant, right? So if you are purchasing something that the costs below 1/60th of your total net worth, you don't even have to track it as part of your net worth. So if you buy, an iPhone and you have a $2 million net worth, you don't really have to track it, right? Right? But if you have only $5,000 net worth and you buy an iPhone that costs $1,000, that's 20% of your net worth. Yeah, you have to track it, right? You have to track it as a part, and you have to really account it, maybe how much are you using that iPhone for your capital, right? For your business, right? And how much you are using it for leisure. So you really need to account it. So what I'm trying to get at is that you want to construct, you always want to keep the balance in your net worth such that you do not really exceed, again, you don't exceed 1/3 in land and 1/3 in capital, because when you do so, you're going to have an optimal growth rate of your net worth. Your soul, so to speak, is going to be at very balanced, right? The growth of these spirits, the positive spirits. So you will simply grow spirit of freedom, clarity, and peace, right? As long as you're out of debt, you are going to keep growing that. And this is accumulating over time. So it's not the same if you are living debt-free for a month only, or if you live for a year or 10 years, right? A person who is living 10 years debt-free, he has much stronger spirit of freedom, for example, than the one who just started, because it's like a tree that grows. You have to water it. You have to kind of, it needs time to grow. And these spirits are not, it's not some sort of woo-woo. It's really how it works. It's really because humans, we people are both physical and kind of metaphysical beings. It's like we have this, what kind of differentiates us from animals, for example, is not that we are so much different physically, right? We basically have same bodily functions, and we kind of have this same, we have to eat, we have to procreate, we have to find shelter from the elements, somehow, and so on. All the other animals kind of have to do that as well.
Yeah, the biology holds true.
Biology holds true, right? But at the same time, we have this completely different dimension in us that is, for example, allowing us to trade with each other. And why do we trade? Why don't animals trade with each other? Because animals are not different from one another in terms of their kind of this spiritual world, right? So people are different. This is why we value things differently at different points in time. So we are able to exchange with each other, because if we exchange, now we value what we have more than before that, right? And this is constantly happening. And, you know, money is just a medium of exchange. So basically, money is something that's strictly human thing, right? Animals do not use money. So what we need to learn now is how to actually, what are the best practices, what are the best principles to handle this world. And Bitcoiners are very, ripe to learning this stuff, because Bitcoin is such a powerful technology. It's such a powerful type of money, and it can be dangerous, right? At the same time, it's like electricity. So if you learn how to use electricity safely, and if you understand the principles of what makes electricity work, and for example, you don't want to. That's what we were talking about in one of the first our talks. You don't want to push, wet arm into electricity socket. You don't want to teach your kid to run around with metal objects near electricity. So we understand that, and we are safe to use electricity however much we want, as long as we have safety precautions in place. I mean, I want to use more electricity. It's the same with Bitcoin, right? So if you are still, if someone is still not sure how to operate Bitcoin safely, which is really about learning how to manage money across opportunity cost, across time, how to not grow negative spirits when you are using money, and how to grow the positive spirits, and how you should think about your net worth. These are the things that we are kind of learning here. When you have all of this, then you can use Bitcoin fully, right? Just like you are using electricity. Because today, when I'm speaking with Bitcoiners, when I see someone who is just dollar cost averaging small amount of money every month in Bitcoin, it's basically it's excellent. Of course, that's already putting you in a way better position than 99% of the world.
But it's not the
But
end stage. It's not. It's like
exactly,
part
but
of
it's
the
still kind
journey.
of,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, if you can imagine, it's kind of like you were using electricity only, let's say maybe 30 minutes a month or 1 hour a month. Why? Because it's dangerous. It can kill you.
Yeah.
Bitcoin can be dangerous, right? Let's not dance around the fact. Many people have Bitcoin derangement syndrome. You can mess up significantly if you misuse Bitcoin, right? If you, for example, if you FOMO into Bitcoin in the bull market at the top, and you maybe take out a lot of debt to increase your stack even more because it's going up, so you want to buy more, right? You feel this extreme level of greed, of fear of missing out. And then if you enter the bear market, right, and you suddenly, your let's say you lose your job, you lose your income, you have to sell at the bottom, basically, and you're still left in debt, right? You're still underwater. I mean, there are people who made huge mistakes with their Bitcoin stacks. So we cannot really just completely ignore that part of the puzzle, because it's there. Again, Bitcoin is neutral. It's a software. It's a protocol. It's basically unchanging, right? It's just gonna chug along and TikTok next block. But people who interact with it can either extremely benefit their lives with it, or they can really mess it up, right? If they don't understand what they are doing. So I completely see the reason why we are, most of the time, we are recommending to newbies, and not just newbies, to seasoned Bitcoiners, to just dollar cost average an amount of money that you're not going to be looking at for at least 4 or 5 years or more. The more you just think of it as something that's you're gonna be for your retirement, and that's completely legitimate. I'm not saying that every Bitcoiner needs to go on a full Bitcoin standard today, right? But I still think if Bitcoiners want to try that, or they have thought about it, there is a way to do it. But there is really, it's like the way that really works. It really makes it so that you are you are growing in the net worth, you are growing your conviction is growing, the way that you are kind of interacting with Bitcoin is getting more and more like you are using money on a daily basis. You just learn to think and live that way. And that's, again, this is why I kind of wrote this, to help other Bitcoiners adopt these practices. And again, it's still very much a draft, it's a work in progress, so I'm more than welcome. I mean, I really would like people to give me more feedback on it if something does not make sense, because then it helps me to kind of sharpen to articulate it better, so that we can all kind of benefit from it. Because you would, there is no, if let's say if you are kind of thinking, maybe you want your close family or friends to kind of get into Bitcoin more, there is no, like, you're never going to be as influential in your orange pilling talk with other people as if you are living it on a full Bitcoin standard. I was pretty much able. The other day I had a talk with a guy who was dabbling around with, he wasn't really a complete newbie, right? He had this couple of exchange accounts and he was trading and kind of successfully. But after we had a talk, I mean, he decided, okay, that's after a week or so, he just called me and he said, look, I'm selling the house here that I'm renting. Basically, it's his second house, and I'm gonna put it all into Bitcoin, and that's it. And I didn't really go too super hard on him. Like I just talked with him. You just feel when someone has such a strong conviction that he is just gonna convey it to you, and that's you gain that as well when you go on a full Bitcoin standard. So you're basically like a light, you're beaming this orange aura around you, and the way you are talking. Like a couple of days ago, I was at the gas station, and someone was, kind of complaining that the gas prices went up and so on. And I just said, my gas prices they just went down. And he was like, what? What do you mean? Like, are you using some sort of like loyalty program or whatever? No. I just said, no. I just don't use this stupid euro. I just save in Bitcoin, right? I have Bitcoin. I pay with it. He was like, really? Yeah, really. So my gas price is actually three times less in the past 3 years, while yours is like probably double, almost like double.
Right.
So you are able to kind of throw all of this little kind of comments with people, and when you sit down with someone, you are able to really convey the Bitcoin case to them. So that's really helpful as well.
I think,
and everyone can do it. That's the most important thing, regardless of. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Regardless of what you are doing, what your line of work is, regardless of your financial situation, your level of income, your expenses, your net worth, do you have debt or not? Everyone can actually do this. It's like it's basically like it's a skill. It's so fundamental skill, because we are using money on a daily basis. Half of every transaction is money, right? So it's no matter how, either we are going to do it sooner or later, at some point, in order to really get this part of your life under full control and really know exactly what you are doing, these are the practices to do. So they're not going to change really. They are kind of timeless. So it's not like, yeah, maybe in a couple of years that's going to change. No, not really. It's going to stay the same. These are the kind of the principles, and they are very easy to understand. Where they're very easy to actually implement. The only thing is that you kind of need to decide to do it, and I would say it's going to take maybe 6 months to kind of to. This is what I recommend, to start with budgeting practice for 6 months, and throughout these 6 months, it's not that you are going to stop budgeting. You are going to continue budgeting as long as you're alive, right? You're going to continue planning your money, basically. But after you have around 6 months of experience, that's when you can really start to understand this time dimension, and how money behaves over time, and how you can actually, now start to kind of see a little bit more ahead, like next 6 months. The longer you're practicing this, the longer you can kind of see the future. It's not really that you are seeing the future, it's like you are planning for the future
Yeah.
better. So if you're practicing it for 1 month, you are able to kind of see over the, around 1 month of time in the future. But if you are practicing this for 10 years, which I'm not still, but when I have 10 years of experience of planning my money behind me, I could be, making 10 years kind of, rough navigation, for the next 10 years. So
Yeah.
that's how it works. So it's better
Like
to
the,
start as soon as possible, so that you can start to accumulate this time, that you see your money in the dimension of time, right? But I'll let you now.
dude, that was so
Ask.
good. That was,
Yeah,
I mean, what I was going to say, I got a few thoughts to share. Number one is the notion that this Git book that you've written, which is just an open source book online called The Practical
yeah,
Bitcoin Standard, the notion that this was written by someone not from a theoretical perspective of like, this is a good thing, this could be a good thing to do. It's like, no, no, no. I've been doing this. This is this is from my experiential. It's like you're sharing your story and you're sharing an actual piece of objective reality from someone doing it and living
yeah,
in radical line with Bitcoin, not some theoretical thing. So I think that gives it far more weight. And just knowing that someone is doing it means that it's unequivocally possible. Like, this is not
yeah,
the excuse that people can make to say, oh, yeah, maybe it can be done. I don't know. It's like, no, no, no. Someone's actually doing it and everything is getting cheaper for that person means that, like, there's less of an excuse. I also like how at the start of the book you mentioned, and you've said it a few times in this conversation, it's the notion of replacing the word budgeting, which I think has a lot of baggage and maybe
yeah,
misperceptions associated with it. I think a lot of people associate budgeting with scarcity or
yeah,
with planning, which is really just gain an awareness and understand where your money is going, right? It's more so an awareness and forward planning exercise than it is like a traditional budgeting exercise in the maybe like the tense that most people have heard of it in. I also think that this whole notion of having a third in your business or capital, a third in your
mhm,
land or home, and a third in cash creates this framework where you're able to constantly reorient yourself
yeah,
to your purchasing power and actually constantly increase your resilience, right?
yeah,
Because even the notion that, okay, we said if you had $50,000 or 100,000 in each category, and Bitcoin had a 50% drawdown, so now you have 50,000. You have to kind of recalibrate. If it doubled, if it went the other way around, right, and you had 100K in Bitcoin, and now you have 200K in Bitcoin, but the value of your home and your capital obviously hasn't doubled because it's
yeah,
not Bitcoin.
yeah, yeah,
It creates an opportunity to take some of that cash, that liquid cash, and put some into your business, put some
yeah,
into your home, so that if Bitcoin then has a 50% drawdown,
exactly.
you've created more resilience by diversifying into the other two pillar areas of your life. And you
If you
actually,
want, right?
if you want, and
If you want.
obviously
So
it's not
this,
like
this,
this second, but it's like
yeah,
working towards that. It gives you an idea, right?
yeah,
It's like if you're on a boat, a sailboat, and you see a
yeah,
lighthouse. If wind comes and pushes you off track,
Yeah.
The goal is not to like warp speed zoom back to that one spot. It's reorient the sail to bring you back into alignment with reaching the lighthouse. And I think it's just a good guidepost, because really what you're doing by living in alignment with Bitcoin, if Bitcoin is truth money and is actually the only stable, truthful tool that we can have to price the value in the world,
Yeah.
you've chosen to live in full alignment with truth. Which, you know what? In a volatile fiat world, living in alignment with truth can seem kind of like challenging at times. But would you rather live in a comfortable lie or an uncomfortable world of truth?
Yeah.
Because guess what? You're not going to be manipulated and pushed off track easily if you live in radical alignment with truth. So it's almost like we all go on this journey. And it's interesting how the trajectory of money from unit of account, medium of exchange, or store of value, medium of exchange, unit of account, kind of also reflects the personal journey that most people go on, right? People start buying Bitcoin as a way to save, and then they start using it, as a novelty to spend. But until you actually price the world
Yeah.
with Bitcoin as your unit of account, you really don't live in full alignment with what Bitcoin truly is, which is a new way of perceiving the world aligned with truth. And one thing I was going to ask, um, when you have those, a third, a third, a third, are you pricing your one third in your land and one third in your company in Bitcoin terms, or are you still like where? How do we navigate pricing?
Okay.
Should we price our home in fiat terms, or should we price
Yeah.
our home in terms of the amount of Bitcoin? What, like, how do we use that?
Well, it's a great question. It's really up to you. I mean, I price it in both, right? Because I think in terms of I account the value of things in prices of things in fiat, because that's what I'm used to. If you tell me right now, I mean, look, for either way, it's gonna work for you. If Bitcoin is worth $100,000, right? Bitcoin, like a house, is gonna be worth, let's say, $100,000 house is gonna be worth 1 Bitcoin. If Bitcoin drops to 50K, then this house is gonna be worth 2 Bitcoin. All right.
Right.
So it doesn't really matter what you are accounting for. It's gonna be easier to think, to just it's easier for us to account in unit of account that everyone else is still using, right?
Right.
But it doesn't mean that you cannot just switch it to Bitcoin and just see, like, let's say I can see my grocery spending in the past month expressed in fiat, right?
Or euros.
In euros here. But I can also see it, how much I spent in Bitcoin, right? I know my inflow and outflow in Bitcoin terms. I know what when Bitcoin was 3 times more, well, not three. When Bitcoin was worth double, at around 60K, than it is today, my income in Bitcoin was half of that, right? Because, right, I was paid half of what I'm paid now in sats in Bitcoin, but I also spent half less in Bitcoin. So it doesn't matter. What's important is it's this net income number, right? It's the purchasing power that we can express purchasing power in whatever we want, right? But it's easy to think in terms of your local fiat. Like for you, it's going to be Canadian dollars. The thing with this balancing of the net worth, what's really important to understand is that the rule of thirds is really like the to kind of it's a guideline. It's not something that you should kind of be very, like, you're not going to be making these moves very often. You may make them maybe during the bull market or during the bear market period, right? Which is like in a usual 4-year cycle, it's like maybe a year, 2 years, half of the cycle, maybe you're going to make these big moves if you want to make them. Because, for example,
So it's like a
I would say,
long-term recalibration, not an
yeah,
instant
it's kind of long
recalibration.
term. It's not something that's urgent, right? It's not what is urgent is to get out of debt. That's really urgent, because you want to start growing positive spirits as soon as possible. You want to start giving as soon as possible, because you cannot really you cannot really give properly if you are in debt, right? And you have to kind of start things in the right order. But with this thing is, it's almost like, look, if let's say if you had, I don't know, I'm gonna throw some crazy numbers. Let's say you had $10 million net worth, right? And you had like, I don't know, $9.5 million in Bitcoin out of that. So let's say you are living in a house that's worth 300 or 400K, and you have around 100 or 200K in your business, in your capital. That's still great. It's not like you have to buy $3 million house, right? You don't have to do it. If the house that you are living in, if your land is fine, right? You don't have to go and buy I don't know, a Bugatti car, right? If you are satisfied with where you are, right, do it. Because like, if you have $9.5 million in Bitcoin, your giving budget is going to be, well, you can just count it, like 950,000 to 1.8 million, right? If you make a transaction, if you give $200,000 to someone, it's gonna affect your sorry, I did I miscalculate? $9 million. Yeah, 900,000 is 10%, right? So 1.8 million is 20%. So if you can give tremendously, like basically you can, if in that situation, your giving would be something like what they started in El Zonte, in El Salvador, right? You can start small circular economy somewhere, basically your
plant a seed somewhere
point,
that
you
for
can
like a
seed
community,
somewhere,
literally.
You can, yeah, there are many things you can help your whoever you have, your close people around you, to maybe get out of debt or whatever. When you're at that point, that's gonna, like, it's gonna actually make you more, it's gonna grow your spirit of generosity more if you have more of your net worth in cash, in Bitcoin. If it's more liquid, right? You have more money to budget, right? To assign in your giving category, it's going to actually increase the growth of your net worth. But again, if you want to, right? If you have $10 million net worth, if you want to, you can buy up to $3.3 million, right? House, and you can put up to 3.3 million in capital, right? In investments of any sort. But don't exceed that. That's really the gist of that part. It's not that you need to start immediately rebalancing. But let's say when you are in, as you said, when you are in a bull market, when your purchasing power goes up and up and up and up, yeah, you can, right? Now you can think about, yeah, maybe I want to buy this house. How much is this house, right? How is my net worth going to look like after I make the purchase? You look at it, right? Am I still within the third, right? Yeah, you are within the third. You still have room to kind of, the Bitcoin can drop and you are still not gonna reach a third, right? So that's really how you use that second part of the guidebook of these principle of thirds. Do not drop, if you drop below a third in your cash, then it's really, you are kind of suboptimally growing your net worth. It's because your giving budget is becoming a little bit too little. And if you drop it, if it goes too below, you start risking this trap that many actually very wealthy people have in the fiat standard, which is they have a lot of assets, but they also have a lot of debt, because they are leveraging their assets to get liquidity, right? So this is what Michael Saylor was talking about, right? You may have, you own a lot of, like Apple, for example, has a lot of assets, right? But they still have debt, right? They still issue debt. They are playing this game, and
game of fiat incentives.
Yeah, if it's fiat incentives, and it's always this yucky kind of confused feeling with your time dimension. You're not thinking clearly for the future. When you are debt free, you can clearly think for a long time in the future. If you have such a large net worth, and such a large net worth in a liquid, most of it would be in Bitcoin, right? In such a liquid form of money, you are able to really kind of think long term. This is what I was listening to a podcast a couple of days ago about a monastery in US, a Benedictine monastery, that received they received a big donation in 2017 in the bull market. Someone donated, and they basically built the monastery, the church, the cathedral, whatever. Like, and not in this fiat architecture way that's like 30 years and then basically have to rebuild it. No, this is like something that's going to last for centuries. So this is the type of mindset that you are kind of growing into when you apply the rule of thirds, and when you just know, yeah, and another very, very good thing is what Bitcoiners also should kind of understand is that you every time you purchase something, in order to own it, right? You purchase and own, you have to, before you make the purchase, you should be making the what's called the cost of ownership calculation, right? Because owning anything means that you are going to incur some cost to maintain the thing, right? When you buy a house, right, it's a brand new house, new building, to keep it as as good condition as possible, you will have to maintain it. You're going to incur some more expenses down the line to just keep everything. I mean, we know that, right? Same with the car, same with anything. And every single thing has its own kind of life cycle, right? Some things last more, some things last less. But since we know how to manage and account money in time dimension, we know that cost of ownership is going to be there, and we account for it. We budget for it. Yeah. And we understand that this is just we do not get in a situation where we are kind of buying something that we are not really able to maintain properly, right? This is the example that I see very often with people who, let's say, they buy a car, right, that they cannot really maintain in such a good, that type of car. In a good condition, they cannot really use it as much because the gas is too expensive or whatever. And it's like, that's not really, you're not going to have any pleasure, any joy out of that kind of ownership experience. So what I recommend is to, if you want something, if you want to own something, and your budget is still, your situation is still does not allow you, you cannot afford it really, right? What you should try to do is you should try to actually use that thing by entering into rent contract. Can you, let's say, you may not be able to buy this house, but you may be able to rent it, at least for some time. You maybe cannot buy this car right now, but perhaps you can rent it for a week and try it out. Try if you see it. I did this on my own, and I grew so disillusioned with what I thought that this is a story for another time, and I'm considering to write it in the guidebook. But basically, what you understand is that you need to understand the difference between renting something and owning something else. And if you want to own something, just follow the rule of thirds and account for it. Just understand that whatever the ownership is, it's going to incur some cost of ownership. And if you do all of that, then you, by all means, spend your Bitcoin if you want to buy whatever. So I'm as you may kind of concluded already, I'm not really one of those people who is going to say, just sell everything and sell your shares and go. I mean, it's kind of snarky comment, but I saw that there was like a meme around Twitter, like these how did they say it? Like check engine light crew, right? So they people were, the car was like, yeah, check engine, you haven't changed your oil or whatever.
Yeah, you stack
And they were
sats
like, no,
instead of taking
stack
care of your
sats.
car. Now it's breaking down, which ends up
Yeah,
being more expensive in the end. So I mean, one of the
exactly,
parts that,
exactly. That's what I was
yeah,
getting at. It ends up being more expensive, and this is same with all other things, and again, like you also you have to kind of not kid yourself, because let's say if you make with our previous example, let's say you make 50K a year, and you spend I don't know 49.5K, right? So you basically have net income of $500, and then you put $1 of that in Bitcoin. Yeah, you haven't spent any Bitcoin, right? Right. So basically, yeah, I'm never gonna sell my Bitcoin. Right? I'm just gonna put $1 of Bitcoin every year. You are growing your stack, right? I mean, you are. If you put the number of sats that you own on X axis,
you're
or on
doubling your, you're
yeah,
potentially
you
doubling
are
your stats each
doubling.
year.
Yeah, basically, you are growing your stack, and it's the line is gonna look, wow, up and to the right. Wow, you are a genius. No, I mean, no, because if you it doesn't matter if you have $1,000, and if you spend $500, it doesn't matter that you didn't spend $500 from Bitcoin part of the balance sheet, right? You still incurred $500 of expense, right? You basically you incurred the opportunity cost, because if you didn't, right, and you converted that $500 into Bitcoin, you would have it right now. So you either consume, right? You either have an outflow or you don't, right? It's binary. So and this thing with I'm never gonna sell my Bitcoin is really kind of like it's just not true, right? It's financially not true. You are spending money, and it doesn't matter, right? If you didn't spend that money, then you could have saved it, right? You can convert it into Bitcoin. And this is why this really only gets clear, but truly clear, like internalized type of clear, once you actually go on a full Bitcoin standard. Because then okay, if I spend it, I spent it, right? And that's it, right? I
And the
Of
amount
course
of
you are.
the amount
Yeah,
of detail in the calculations you would have had to have made to spend that very precious thing means that you're going to value the thing you bought much more, right? The notion that if I
absolutely.
actually own something, I am the pride of ownership makes it so that I'm going to take very good care of that thing. Whereas if I'm a slave to that thing, energetically, I probably have a shitty relationship with it. I'm probably not going to take care
Absolutely,
of
you
it.
have.
And so it's probably
Absolutely.
going to cost me way more in the end, because if I'm not taking care of this car that I loved
Absolutely.
for like 6 months, but now I hate because I have to spend $1,000 of my money per month, regardless of whether I want to or not, I'm stuck
Yep.
doing that for 84 months. I'm probably not going to care for it. And I think there's
Yeah,
something energetically, there's a significant difference between your
absolutely.
relationship with the product you own and your relationship with the product that owns you, regardless of how excited you were when you initially acquired it. And I think by amortizing the cost of ownership of something with debt, we actually allow ourselves to not really understand the cost of maintenance, because we essentially acquired something we can't afford
Yep.
through this kind of manipulation with credit. Therefore, if we can't even afford the thing, we're probably not going to afford the maintenance costs on the thing. So the idea that if you need an engine repair on a car that's way more expensive than what you could afford, you might get blasted with an expense that you never foresaw because you bought something you couldn't afford, but you tricked yourself into thinking you could by taking on a
Yep.
shitload of debt. And there's like, yeah, I think it's just I think this is all aspirational stuff, right? It's like it's not like everyone's going to wake up and have everything divvied up into a third tomorrow or live just radically
No, no.
according to truth. But I think the aspiration of moving towards eliminating debt, owning things instead of them owning you, this is like this long-term objective that every day, it's almost like health, right? It's like the
Yep.
long-term aspiration is to be in good health, and that comes through the accumulation of wise choices each day. And I think the same thing holds true. It's like if the aspiration is to get out of debt and the aspiration is to bring our life into alignment with this one third, one third, one third sort of ancient wisdom framework, then it's like, what am I doing tomorrow to bring myself more into alignment with that aspiration?
Yeah.
Even knowing that I might never get to a perfect third, but that is the aspiration I'm working towards. And so every decision I make gets put through the filter of, does this bring me closer to that aspiration or further from it? Just like with health, it's like it starts with just understanding health, right? And then it's every decision I make each day either brings me closer to what I've defined as health or further away from it. And I'm not actually going to expect to be perfect and expect that every decision I ever make will only bring me in alignment with health. But it's almost like if the vast majority of my decisions can bring me towards this aspiration that I've decided is important, then you're going to be doing good, right? You're getting closer to your goal. And I think number one, it's knowing what is a good aspiration. Number two, what is a framework for achieving that aspiration? And number three is actually putting the energy into applying the knowledge to in truthful based reality bring you closer to that aspiration. I think the practical Bitcoin standard answers the understanding what is a good aspiration, understanding the method of working towards that aspiration, and then you've, through kind of giving people these planning tools to deeply understand their money and plan intelligently, you've given people kind of like a tool belt to actually start moving towards that aspiration. And I think it's probably way more powerful than you realize. And, you know, if 1 out of every 10,000 Bitcoiners looks at that and it actually has some sort of impact on them to say like, maybe I'm doing things differently than maybe the truthful way, I think it eventually, it's almost like by reading this, a seed is unequivocally planted that may not germinate right away, but cannot be unplanted. And I think that's the goal, right? Because if we all live in alignment with Bitcoin, fiat basically dies because we're not participating in the game of creating more money. And by not taking out more debt, we are essentially giving money back to the world. This was one thing that stuck with me after I met you last year, was this notion that I had never realized that every time I go to get a mortgage or every time I take some sort of credit out, I'm actually debasing everyone who uses that currency. And so it's almost like this spiritual calling to be like, I don't want to be a part of that problem. Therefore, my incentive is to reduce and unwind my role in creating more fiat manipulation through the day-to-day things that I was doing that I wasn't even realizing. And that is, I think that's a good aspiration for us all to live in alignment with, at our own pace, in our own way. Just like the process of health is to find your way down the path of health in your own way, at your own pace, not being harsh on ourselves or judging ourselves for not going as fast as we want to or being as far as we want to. It's just like, what are you doing today to make a better choice to bring you in alignment with that? Because to me, a healthy person is someone who makes one wise choice a day. To me, a financially healthy person is someone who's making one wise choice to move towards the aspiration of not being in debt and actually having a deep, truthful understanding of their money and how to plan in alignment with what they want. Because I think a lot of people want a lot of things. They might want the wrong things, which that's the lesson you learn when you acquire the wrong thing and then you're pissed that you acquired it. That's the lesson. Just learn from it. But I also think even if you want something, if you don't have a framework for accurately planning a means to get there, then it can seem inachievable, right? And I think right now there's so many ways to get dopamine in ways that aren't natural. But one of the most OG ways of gaining dopamine is actually being able to detect meaningful progress towards a goal. And so every wise choice you make becomes a dopamine source instead of scrolling through Twitter. And so I think it wraps into health so much, because I think, to me, money is the keystone pillar of health. If money is the tool we use to store our time, and most people just don't have time to take care of themselves, key number one is put your time in a tool that actually preserves it, so you have time available to spend on taking care of yourself. And so, health and money become this deeply intertwined thing where the same process kind of holds true. It's understand, create a plan, apply the plan, and be patient, and just and when you use low time preference money, you adopt a low time preference mindset, and health fundamentally is a low time preference endeavor. So I think,
absolutely, whether
you realize it or not, a practical Bitcoin standard is probably going to make a fuckload of people way healthier. So thank you.
Absolutely. It absolutely will. And let's say, one of the things, let's say, for example, most people who, when I have felt that certainly, but everyone basically reports that once you create your first zero-based budget, right? Because with money, it's really either it's kind of in a state of disorder, like chaos, or you put it in a state of perfect order. And then if you keep, let's say today you create a zero-based budget with your money, and tomorrow you make a transaction, you go out and you buy something, whatever, and you actually record that transaction in the budget, right? You maintain the perfect order. Your money is in perfect order. The moment you kind of start kind of slacking with that, or just, I just let it go, then this order kind of slowly gets into more, the entropy grows, basically. The forces of chaos kind of start to creep in. And then the moment you decide to come back and just put it back in order, just, rebalance the budget, basically start fresh, right? Make new budget, then it's back in perfect order. The thing that most people report the first time that they make a zero-based budget is they say they feel like they got around 20% raise, basically, that they feel like before, it's literally like that. Before you have it, you are you feel around 20% less of basically, it's like you have less money, you have yours, it's just all unclear. Once you do it, you sit down and you do it, right? And after that, you feel like you basically you're 20% wealthier, or you got 20% raise. That's the literal feeling that
just
you
from
have.
clarity.
Just from that clarity that you put it in perfect order, and now you start. You still may have that. You still are not you still maybe haven't basically went into the giving aspect, or you still haven't thought about Bitcoin is still like sitting somewhere deep down in your cold storage. It's like still not, it's too crazy to start spending it or whatever. But you made your first zero-based budget, and that's it. You are now, it's like you get this clarity, and I kind of recommend first mission is spend 180 days maintaining your budget, right? Have like it basically, you would kind of have to be able to answer these types of questions, like for example, what was your let me try to read it exactly. What is your age of money? Right, that's one question.
Let's talk about that next time we chat. We could do a whole podcast just
sure.
on aging your money,
Just
because I think it's actually can seem abstract, but once I read that area of the book, I was like, this makes so much sense, and it's actually such a powerful tool.
Absolutely, we should definitely, and I would be very happy to kind of I'm definitely going to use this conversation to improve certain things in the maybe a reshuffle. It's again, it's still work in progress. It's an open source thing. It's certainly not going to be really mainstream Bitcoiner ready for a few more months, I think, until it's really kind of polished. It needs to go on under a round of editing, but I think it's going to get there. I think it's going to be a useful framework for any Bitcoiner to.
You have the skeleton. It's like this. You must start with the skeleton, then you can start to refine the tissues. But I think one thing when you said that came to mind is this notion of, everyone can think of like a microscope, right? Where you have a microscope, you have a specimen. The specimen is your money. The focus reel is how clearly you actually understand what's happening. And I actually think most of the anxiety around money has nothing to do with what the image actually is, what the situation is with your money. It's from not understand. It's from being constantly staring at a blurry image, constantly not having clarity of what's happening means that you are always in the dark. And that alone is anxiety provoking. So this notion that people feel richer when they get clarity, I think they actually just they've automatically initiated a better relationship with money, because now they at least have clarity, and clarity is required before a plan is created to improve that image. But regardless of the image, you must start with clarity. And I think just understanding your money is the source of clarity.
Absolutely. And then when you have this clarity, you also eliminate this, like if let's say that maybe you have some debt, right? Maybe the debt is kind of sitting on your back,
Lingering.
so to speak. You're lingering. It's like making you kind of anxious, or you're kind of putting it out, not really bothering with it, but then you are kind of, you just get it. When you make your zero-based budget, what happens is you turn all of this kind of anxious, you kind of depressive thoughts into this fuel that you are now starting to get really, really focused, because budgeting is planning money, right? Is basically showing you exactly what the situation is, right? You may have took out a mortgage for this house, right? Maybe it's worth $300,000. You took out $300,000 mortgage, and you have paid off maybe $10,000, right? Or 20 or 30. You are still $270,000 in debt, right? And like this can focus you so well to basically understand, am I going to do this for the next 30 years, or am I going to either, is this house, do I value, right? And I mean, do I value the feeling of this spirit that I feel, right? Which is going to be glaringly obvious once you start accounting, and once you start accounting your payments, your debt payments towards in your budget, once you see your assets to liabilities shift after a couple of months, after 3 months, you may start thinking, oh my God, this is too crazy. I don't want to have this. I want to actually sell it, and I want to rent, right, instead. Or you may decide, right? It's up to you, whoever is listening to this. You may decide, okay, I still love this house, I still love this place, but I don't want to, I want to pay it off before, right? But then you just have to continue budgeting. And what happens is, at some point you're gonna feel like, oh my God, what am I doing? Because if I get rid of this, if I just sell this shit, right, liquidate it and rent, and I get out of that, and then I can move on to the third thing. I can actually start to give meaningful 10 to 20% of my budget, and I can actually I can actually make double, triple, quadruple of what I used to make, because now I'm just free, and I have this spirit of generosity growing. You can make huge changes, but again, they all start with just sitting down and
Clarity.
getting full control over your money. Just put it down on a piece of, or use the software. I have it in a link that I use. It's excellent, and just start to practice it. It's a type of hygiene. It's like I don't know. It's like taking a shower, or something that you are. It's not something that's once you kind of get used to it on a daily basis, it becomes part of your habit. You're not even thinking about it.
Yeah, it feels good to be clean once you know what showering is. You're like, I like feeling clean.
For me, it's like I don't care. I take maybe a couple of minutes every day to just enter all my transactions in a budget, and that's it. I rebalance it once every couple of days. If Bitcoin goes up, I just reconcile the purchasing power, rebalance the budget. If it goes down, the same thing, and that's it. When I have money coming in, I assign all of it. When I have money going out, I track. I enter the transactions, and I have the full kind of I can tell you exactly how much I spent on whatever 5 months ago, 7 months ago. Everything is here. I can plan for the duration of time that I am running the budget, which is now almost three and a half years on a full Bitcoin 3 years on a full Bitcoin standard. So I can make 3-year plan. That has it's pretty informed, right? For me, right? And it's all individual. It's your budget. It's not nobody else's. Like your situation with money is unique to you.
Yeah.
And that's really it. But the principles are same for everyone. You just have to kind of learn them, apply them. It's easy. It's not hard. Doesn't take a lot of your time on a daily basis once you start. It may take maybe an afternoon or so to kind of read through it, and at least this first part for the budgeting, how to do it actually, and that's it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I'm going to be sensitive with our time. It's 11:02,
Yeah,
and I'm already excited for the next chat because I think
for
I'll
sure.
put the link to the Practical Bitcoin Standard that you've written. This sort of ongoing open source draft that I think will forever be a work in progress, but I think is definitely good enough for people to get a first glance understanding at just like from a zoomed out view, like what does getting clarity with my money even look like? How do I go about doing that? What are the tools that I can employ? So thank you for writing that. And thank you for taking time today to chat. Everyone listening, thanks for being here. Take care of yourselves. Check out Pavel's work online. I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes. And Pavel, we'll chat maybe in like a month. We'll chat and we can talk about aging money and we'll see where things are at with the world because I think
Yeah,
we're in for a ride, and I'm here for it.
yeah,
I know you are too. And yeah, that's it for now,
for
folks.
sure.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.